born in the land of riches, gold, oil, diamond bright. But our streets are stained with blood, but the youth fight for their rights. Protesting for a future, yet they're slaughtered in the night. While the leaders sit in silence, flying private jets in flight. They drive their bulletproof cars while we walk these streets. Say there's no money, but their jets fly with ease. Our children starve, but they're too blind to see. Muguland, why can't we be free? Muguland, Muguland. We're crying out for change, but they shoot us on the streets. Muguland, Muguland. We have all it takes to be great, but only corruption is great in the land. They say no money's left, but the rich keep getting fat. Their wrists shine with diamonds, private jets, imagine that.
Episode 3. The Drug Bust and the Narrow Escape. The clang of the cell door closing behind him echoed in Bisola Eleniyan's ears, reverberating through his bones. The sound was cold, final, and it sent a chill down his spine. He sat on the edge of the narrow cot, staring at the grey concrete walls that had become his world for the past few days. The sterile, suffocating air of the holding cell was a far cry from the luxurious penthouses and sleek offices where he had conducted his business. Bisola had always known the risks. In the back of his mind, he had been aware that the empire he was building was precariously perched on the edge of legality. But he had been careful, meticulous even, to stay just out of reach of the law. Or so he thought. It had all unraveled so quickly. The early morning raid, the flash of badges, the harsh commands of the FBI agents as they stormed his apartment. Bisola had barely had time to register what was happening before he was cuffed and dragged into the back of a police car, his rights read to him in a cold monotone. The charges were severe: money laundering, conspiracy to distribute heroin, aiding and abetting a criminal enterprise. The words had fallen like a guillotine, cutting through any illusions Bisola might have harbored about his invincibility. He had been careful, but not careful enough. The authorities had been watching Akim Oloja's network for months, building a case, waiting for the right moment to strike. And now they had their prize. A major player in the operation, someone who could give them the names and connections they needed to dismantle the entire organization. As Bisola sat in that cell, the weight of his predicament settled over him like a shroud. The prospect of spending the rest of his life in an American prison loomed large, suffocating him with its finality. The money, the power, the connections, they all meant nothing now. He was just another inmate, just another cog in the machine of the American justice system. The door to his cell creaked open, and a guard stepped in, nodding toward Bisola. "Your lawyer's here," he said, his tone devoid of any warmth or empathy. Bisola stood, his legs unsteady beneath him, and followed the guard down the narrow corridor to a small, windowless room. There, sitting at a metal table, was his lawyer, a man with a stern, weathered face, dressed in a crisp suit that seemed out of place in the drab surroundings. "Mr. Eleniyan," the lawyer greeted him, standing to shake his hand. "Please, have a seat." Bisola sat down, his hands trembling slightly as he clasped them together on the table. The lawyer wasted no time, pulling out a folder and laying it on the table in front of him. "We have a problem," the lawyer said, his voice low and serious. "The government has built a solid case against you. They have records of your financial transactions, witness statements and surveillance footage. If this goes to trial, the chances of acquittal are slim." Bisola felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "What are my options?" he asked, his voice strained. The lawyer hesitated for a moment, then opened the folder, revealing a stack of papers. "The U.S. Attorney's Office is willing to offer you a deal. It's not ideal, but it's the best we're going to get." Bisola's eyes narrowed as he looked at the documents. "A deal? A plea bargain?" the lawyer explained. You plead guilty to a lesser charge of money laundering, and in exchange, the other charges are dropped. You forfeit the funds in your accounts, but you avoid a lengthy prison sentence. How long? Bisola asked, his heart pounding in his chest. Time served, the lawyer replied, plus probation, but you'll be free to go. The words hung in the air, almost surreal in their simplicity. Free to go. After everything, after all the risks he had taken, it seemed impossible that he could walk away from this with nothing more than a slap on the wrist. But the lawyer's expression was grave, his eyes sharp and calculating. This is your best option, Mr. Eleniyan, the lawyer continued. You take this deal, or you roll the dice in court. But I'm telling you now, if this goes to trial, the odds are not in your favor. Bisola's mind raced, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He had always been a gambler, willing to take risks for the promise of greater rewards. But this was different. This was his life, his freedom hanging in the balance. He looked up at the lawyer, his expression hardening with resolve. I'll take the deal. The lawyer nodded, relief flickering in his eyes. Good, I'll make the arrangements. You'll be out of here by the end of the week. As the lawyer gathered the papers, Bisola sat back in his chair, his thoughts a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. He had narrowly escaped a fate that could have destroyed him, but the cost was steep. The money he had worked so hard to amass was gone, forfeited to the US government. And with it, the empire he had begun to build in America had crumbled before it could even take shape. But as the initial shock faded, a new resolve began to take root in Bisola's mind. America had been a stepping stone, a place where he had learned the ropes, honed his skills and made connections. But it was never meant to be the end game. No, the end game was back in Alea City, back in Muguland, where he could leverage everything he had learned to build something far greater. The name Bisola Eleniyan would not end in a prison cell. It would rise to new heights, more powerful than ever before. The following week, as Bisola stepped out of the courthouse, a free man, the cold wind of Alea City biting at his face, he knew that this was a turning point. He had played with fire and had almost been burned, but he had survived. And now, with the lessons learned and the scars to prove it, he was ready to return to Alea City and claim what was rightfully his. As he made his way through the bustling streets, the towering buildings of Seattle fading into the background, Bisola's mind was already racing ahead. He would return to Muguland, but he would do so as a different man. A man who had seen the worst the world had to offer, and had come out the other side stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. The game was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning, and this time, Bisola Eleniyan would play to win, no matter the cost.
Born in the land of riches, gold, oil, diamond bright. But our streets are stained with blood, but the youth fight for their rights. Protesting for a future, yet they're slaughtered in the night. While the leaders sit in silence, flying private jets in flight. They drive their bulletproof cars while we walk these streets. Say there's no money, but their jets fly with ease. Our children starve, but they're too blind to see. Muguland, why can't we be free?